Here's a question. If you added up the war budgets of the next 9 countries on Earth, who would still outspend them all? One country does. Look at the world this way, and the map stops being a map. It becomes a single, glowing column. $7 trillion preparing for war. That is the most ever recorded by anyone in any year, and one nation accounts for more than a third of it alone. Now, meet the giant. The United States spent $907 billion on its military in 2024. That is 37% of everything the world spent on war. To put it plainly, America outspends the next 9 countries on this map combined. It is not the biggest spender. It is a category of 1. But the number gets stranger the longer you hold it. 2 times larger than the country in second place. Inside the NATO alliance, the United States pays for 2/3 of the bill. The other 31 members together cover the rest. The map has a sense of scale, and it is not a gentle one. So who is in second place? China spent an estimated $314 billion in 2024. That is a serious sum, the second largest on Earth. And yet it is less than a third of the American figure. China has now raised its budget for 3 decades without pause. It is the slow, patient kind of build, never flashy, never stopping. To close the gap with America, it would need to roughly triple its spending. But that gap ahead of it is still measured in continents. Now Russia. Here the story shifts from money to obsession. Russia spent around $49 billion in 2024. That alone is up 38% in a single year. But the raw number hides the truth. 1% of its entire economy on the military. That is a war footing, written into the books. Meanwhile, something quiet happened in Germany. For decades, Germany underspent on purpose, haunted by its own history. Then it spent $88 billion in 2024, a 28% jump. That was the moment a €100 billion special fund finally hit the accounts. Just like that, Germany became the biggest military spender in Western Europe for the first time since reunification. Old habits, it turns out, end the moment a neighbor invades. Let's go to India. India spent $86 billion in 2024, the 5th largest budget in the world. It guards 2 tense borders at once, with China and with Pakistan. For the population it defends, the per-person cost is modest. India buys a great deal of army for its money. Now, the old powers. The United Kingdom spent $82 billion. Saudi Arabia spent $80 billion. France spent $65 billion. These were once the empires that drew the borders on antique maps like this one. Today, they sit mid-table, comfortable and gray. The cartographers became the footnotes. But there is one country here whose number means something entirely different. Ukraine spent $65 billion in 2024. On its own, that is a large budget, the same as France. The difference is what it costs them. Ukraine is spending 34% of its whole economy on survival. That is the heaviest military burden carried by any nation on Earth. Sit with that figure for a moment. 34% of everything a country produces poured into not being erased. 5%. So Ukraine carries more than 13 times the world's burden. No other country on this map spends like that, because no other country has to. Ukraine is not budgeting for war. Ukraine is mortgaging its entire future against the present one. Now, the overperformer. Watch Israel. In 1 year, Israeli military spending surged 65% to $46 billion. That is the steepest 1-year rise of any major spender on this map. 8% of the economy, among the highest shares anywhere. A small country, by population, fielding a budget that punches far above its size. On this map, intensity does not always need scale. Let's widen the lens to the quieter spenders. Japan spent $55 billion. South Korea spent $48 billion. Both sit beside larger, louder neighbors. Both spent decades keeping their militaries deliberately small. Japan alone raised its budget by 21% in a single year. The neighborhood changed, and the budgets followed. Here's the thing about the top of the list. The 5 biggest spenders, America, China, Russia, Germany, and India, account for 60% of all the war money on Earth. 5 countries, 60%. The other 190-odd nations split what remains. Concentration on a map looks like a very short list. Now, The trend, because the direction matters more than any single year. 4% in 2024. That is the steepest one-year jump since the end of the Cold War. Spending has now climbed for 10 years straight. The line on the chart is not wobbling, it is leaving the room. So let's pull all the way back. 5% of everything it produces on the means of war. That is $1 in every 40, taken from roads, schools, and hospitals, and pointed outward. It is not a fortune, as shares go, but it is a choice, made by almost everyone at once. And that is the real shape of this map. We tend to picture an arms race as many rivals neck and neck. The data shows something lonelier. One giant, a distant second, and a long, thin tail of everyone else. The most lopsided map on Earth was never about who is fighting. It was about who can afford to. One last thought, before the map fades. Every number you just saw is a price tag on fear. The strange part is how rational each line looks up close, and how mad the total looks from far away. The cartographers drew the borders. We are the ones still paying to defend them.